I'm Kara Ray, founder of Ambitious Moms Balancing Business and Babies. I'm a mother, a stepmother to 3 beautiful children. I'm a wife and a proud entrepreneur. I'm a mindset coach specifically for mothers who desire to strip the mom guilt and own their ambition in business and family life. The Powerful and Uncensored Mompreneur podcast is for the ambitious women and mothers who are ready to rise together and empower one another. Get plugged in each week for unfiltered and uncensored conversations between myself and industry leaders who support you, have unwavering points of view, and empower women to believe in themselves. We will be discussing business, spirituality, energy, strong points of views, manifestation, and what I like to call breaking the stigma topics. Conversations that will no longer be silenced. This is a safe place to reclaim your power of being a woman. Let's dive in. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Powerful and Uncensored Mompreneur podcast. Today, I'm super excited because I get to interview Natasha Storm. And Natasha is a life coach who helps badass women reinvent themselves after disruptive relationships. So welcome, Natasha.
Yeah, well, thank you for interviewing me. I'm super excited.
It's going to be good. So is there anything else that you'd like to tell our listeners about you?
Oh, where do you want me to start?
Whatever you want to say.
I don't really know what to say. I work one-on-one with women who are kind of at a place in their life where they're stuck with and forward in relationships. So kind of you've been in the position where you've dumped your man 10 times and you're exhausted by your own shit and you're finally ready to cut the ties and like step into that next part of your life and, you know, make a declaration, I guess, to the world that like you are worthy of more. So
love it.
Yeah.
I was literally just having a conversation with a girlfriend of mine last night where she was in such a negative relationship and now she just feels completely closed off to like receiving love and accepting love. And I was like, oh girl, I could tell you so much.
Yeah, totally.
I told her to listen because I told her that this was coming out and that she needed to listen to this interview. So
oh, beautiful. Well, that's super exciting. I think that people grossly underestimate the impact that romantic relationships have on their life, where it's kind of like, what areas are you struggling in? What areas have been affected because of this negative romantic relationship? Well, shit, every single one. So yes. It's crazy when you put it into that perspective, like what it does to us when we're not operating from a healthy place and you're staying in a relationship to avoid the feelings of feeling guilty when you leave them, you know, and that uncomfortability that comes with like having the breakup conversation. It sucks for all of 20 seconds.
Yes.
And then you can move through it.
Yes. And that was one thing I was going to ask you about is the ability of having these tough conversations and what that can impact on your confidence. And just when you're going through a disruptive relationship, that having those tough conversations can re-empower you. And so I wanted you to just like touch a little bit on the ability and that power of having a tough conversation.
Okay. I think one of the biggest reasons, like my personal belief why people struggle with so much anxiety is because you just simply don't know where you stand with people, right? Because like anxiety in itself is lack of clarity. It's irrational. It's coming up with all the what ifs, worst case scenarios. And the quickest way to squash that is to get clarity. So if I am uncomfortable and I'm anxious with you or a friend or a boyfriend or anybody in my life, it's because there's a situation that I'm unsure of. Well, the fastest way to alleviate that anxiety is to ask a question, right? Be it to yourself or to somebody else. So I think people get stuck in these looping patterns where they don't have these difficult conversations because they don't want to be perceived as aggressive, confrontational. Making something out of nothing is huge, right? Like, I don't want to be codependent. I don't want to ask that guy what he meant when he said this thing to me. It's not about that. It's about you not sitting in unnecessary anxiety. And it's kind of hard in the beginning to get people to like buy into that, right? Because you tell them that and they feel like you've been told your entire life, if you have nothing nice to say, then don't say anything at all. So then you've taken that, turned it into a limiting belief. You're now an adult in a relationship with somebody and I have a problem. You and me need to talk about it, but you feel like you can't because it's, you know, I don't have anything nice to say. Or I'm going to say this and you're going to reject me. And, you know, it's just the mind playing tricks on you. But once you start doing it, oh man, it is so empowering. And you can get to a place where like you just default. That's just normal. Like somebody says something, it hurts your feelings. And you're just like, whoa, pump the brakes. Like, what did you mean when you said that? Yes. And you get really good at it. So it quits being offensive, right? Like people are so scared of being aggressive. But like when you do it all the time, it's the intention behind it, right? If I came up to you, started a conversation and was like, hey lady, you really pissed me off. Well, okay, like that might be a little aggressive. But if you're saying like, I have hurt feelings about something, that's not aggressive. The intention isn't aggressive. So I think that's like, it's such a game changer when people are able to just like freely step into their voice and like say what is on their mind when they want to say it. And who cares what the outcome is, like the result, right? Like if you're going into it in the right place, and setting the stage up for success, like you're going to nail the conversation, even if it doesn't go the way you thought it was supposed to. So
100%. And love that, especially. And I think sometimes the toughest conversations that people can have is that conversation with themselves when they're so used to being around other people, or they make themselves busy, that then when they're by themselves, they can't sit with their own thoughts. And then you make up excuses on why you can't do something. And even in previous relationships that I was in, where I should not have gotten into those relationships, like now I'm married, but before, there was one guy that I dated multiple times, and every time I was like, why the fuck did I do that? Like, why? Like,
totally.
And then now, in regards to like feeling more empowered, is that a lot of people don't have that ability to have those tough conversations. And so when you do, and you're confident in this, people can sometimes see this as intimidating, or because I can't tell you how many times I have been called intimidating in the last like year, and it blows my freaking mind. I'm like, what about me is intimidating? And then when they tell me that it's because I have boundaries and I have values, I'm like, but that's a good thing. Like,
totally.
I'm like, so people need to understand the difference between intimidating and just knowing and being confident in who you are.
Yeah. Absolutely. I want to jump in and say something about that. So like when I was younger, I was like not very tactful and I wasn't very graceful. I was super aggressive. And if I had a problem, I didn't deliver it appropriately. And it was aggressive. So, and then I hit a point with it that like everybody in my life started telling me like, you're aggressive, you're too assertive, you're this, you're that. And it was like very negative. And I had so many people tell me that at a very vulnerable point in my life that I was like, okay, like I'm going to like pull back and quit saying what was on my mind. Well, Jesus, a year and a half into doing that, I started having panic attacks all the time. And I had never had anxiety before. I mean, my delivery wasn't that smooth, but like you always knew where you stood with me. And I went from like one extreme to like, I could be upset and I would just like literally tell myself, I'll just like let this go without needing to have a conversation about it because I don't want to be aggressive. And this landed me in a snowbank in -30 weather, literally having a panic attack about the fact that like I couldn't get off planet Earth. Like, do you know how ridiculous that is? Like, where are you going to go, babe? Like to Mars? So, and it's crazy because like the beliefs you have, right? Because like I literally let a bunch of people convince me that like it wasn't appropriate to say what was on my mind when I was feeling it. And when people tell me that and they say I can't do that, all I think of myself is like -30 in a snowbank. And I'm like, no, you have to. Like you can't keep operating from a place where you refuse to talk about what is bothering you to yourself, to other people. So I think it's huge when people say like, you're aggressive or you're intimidating, and we don't realize like how impactful that stuff is, and it like silences people when it shouldn't.
So. Yep. And I don't know, I think my view on the word intimidating, it's a piss off word. Like you were talking before, like it pisses me off when someone tells me that I'm intimidating. But then I come at it in a space of love where I'm very curious as to why someone thinks that way. And it's always clarified that that's not actually what they were intending to say. But I don't know, I always value honesty in people. So no matter what, I don't have a big circle of people, because the people that I have in my life,
I value the fact that you can tell me when I'm doing something stupid, or if I am just being, well, if I'm being an idiot, if I'm being rude, if I'm being negative. Like, I have those people that can call me out on my shit, even if it makes me uncomfortable, but I do the same to them. And so that's like a big value. And I think people forget that, like, you need people in your corner that love you and support you, but also will call you out on your shit when you need to be called out on it.
Totally.
Like, oh, this happened to me last week where a friend of mine called me out and she was like, you're being negative. Like, you are totally just way too much in your head. Get out of it. And she was not joining the pity party. And I'm like, you know what? I kind of wanted you to, but thank you for not. And thank you for calling me out on that. Cause like, that was not my space. And at first I was like, dude, just make me feel good because I feel shitty. And she's like, no, I'm not here for that. I'm here because this is not where you need to stand. And so I think, I just wish people would be more vocal about their wants and their needs, because people sometimes think that they can't have this abundant, amazing life, but you can. Like, what makes you different than anybody else? Like, you are different. You are a unique person, but why can this person be a millionaire and you can't?
Yeah, totally.
It just, that's a total different tangent, but
for sure. I think another big thing with having those conversations is like, so there's so much fear and so much stigma attached to saying what's on your mind, right? Mm-hmm. But then when you actually do it and you show up as that person consistently, it actually has like the adverse effect. Everybody in my life is one of their favorite things about me is I always know where I stand with you. If you ever, like, you know, maybe we go through like 3 months of stuff gets really crazy where we haven't spoke much. I cross their mind in a grocery store and they're like, is Natasha mad at me? And within 5 seconds, they're able to correct that and be like, no, because if she was mad, I would know where I stand with her and she would have told me by now. Yes. How liberating to have relationships in your life where it's like, you're always going to know where you stand with me. If I'm upset, I'm going to tell you. If I love you, I'm going to tell you. You know, if we need to have a conversation, it's going to happen. And I think that's huge because so many people are scared that if I step into my voice, if I have these conversations, I'll lose people, when it's actually the exact opposite. Yep. The more honest you are, the more people want to be around you because it's so uncommon for people to just be that bold about what they want. So like, oh man, you bring a sense of certainty that I don't have in any other relationship. And I wish that like more people could like get to that point and understand that. Feel super passionate about that.
Like, honest, Kate, I gotta do a little throwback here to high school days when my 2 best friends are from when I was younger, moving into high school. And this was not one of my proudest moments and the only moment that this happened, thank goodness. But my best friend, me and her got into an actual like fist fight, and it impacted our relationship in so many ways where we ended up becoming so honest because we got to this point that we held so many things in that unfortunately it got to that point that we were so bent up in anger. But now me and her sit back and we laugh at that. We joke about it. We're like, hey, we should not have fucking done that. However, we are still solid. I don't have to talk to her every month, but I still know that she is my freaking best friend, that she will be there to the ends of the earth. And she knows the same thing about me. And I love that because there's other friendships that I've had in my life where people message me randomly. They're like, are you mad at me? Should I be? Did you do something? Like, I don't think so. If I didn't tell you that I was with you, like, I'm pretty sure we're good. But I've had to have a few of these conversations with people. And then it leaves me sitting there and like, where's your confidence? Where's your confidence in our friendship or who I am? Because you don't know me very well then if you're feeling this uncomfortability, because it shouldn't be there. And so my little throwback there was just because that is the type of relationship that I have. My 2 best friends, I see them maybe once a month. And that's not because we don't want to see each other more often, but we also have a lot of other things going on. And we've either grown families or we have relationships or all these things, but we respect that. That's, oh my goodness. I love this conversation because I could just chat with you forever about this stuff. But I want to ask you about what was one of the toughest conversations that you had to have with yourself in regards to like a disruptive relationship that really like you really pushed yourself to have to do it, and then you came out of the other side like in a very positive.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so about maybe a little over 2 years ago, I was in a relationship with a guy, and like I met this man and I like fell in love with him before like we ever kissed, we ever went on a date. Like I literally looked at him and I was like, you walk on water. Like, and in my mind, I was going to spend the rest of my life with him. Like I was so committed, and I've never really been committed in relationships. Like I never cheated on anybody in the past, but like I was in a 5-year-long relationship, and I was always kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I was never like, this is the dude for me. So when I met my previous ex, you know, it was a game changer, right? It was so toxic. He was so emotionally unavailable. He told me all the time, whenever I tried to like reach out to him emotionally, be affectionate in a way that like would have obviously created intimacy and like really deep connection between us, he would always remind me that it was temporary, that our relationship was temporary, and to not have expectations of him and all this stuff. And I was at a super weird place in my life because I was like going through this like Buddhist crap where it was like nothing means anything and everything's temporary. So I had serious buy-in, right? In my mind, I was like, if I love you, then I'll accept this part of you and you'll accept me. The only thing is that the relationship was one-sided. So, and to take it even a step further, there was a lot of stuff attached to that relationship because of the way it started, like how we met one another. And so about 7 or 8 months into it, I was so miserable. Like when I was with him, we would fight about how temporary we were, and then the fight never ended unless we were having sex. And it was almost like the sex was like a pattern interrupt to the anger, right? It was like I couldn't get love from you one way, so I would get it from you in intimacy or like sex, and then I'd wake up the next morning, but nothing was resolved. Like I would literally open up my eyes and be like, I am still pissed and hurt about the stuff we were fighting about yesterday. So I was driving to work one day, I pulled up to a red light, and I thought to myself, he had always told me that I was so fearful, that I was scared of everything. So I pulled up to this red light, and after 8 months of fighting with him that I wasn't like this fearful woman and that he was full of shit, I questioned it. I was like, am I scared the way that like he tells me I am? Like, am I operating from a place of fear driving my life? And I had this like 30 seconds where I just about like submitted, like, and became totally submissive to it, right? And I got so pissed that for like 30 seconds that I felt this way, that I whipped a Yui, I drove home, and I was like, fuck you, packed up the stuff to the roof of my vehicle and left. And it was one of the hardest conversations I ever had with myself, because I was like, you will destroy me. If I stay, you will destroy me, because I have fought you every day for 8 months that like I am not a weak woman and I am not fearful. And it was like after 8 months, you finally had 30 seconds that you wore me down. And I didn't want to leave him. And it was the hardest relationship I ever left, because I didn't leave because I didn't love him. I left because I had to love myself more, and I didn't really know how to do that at the time. And I remember driving down the highway, like just bawling and like screaming literally at the like top of my lungs, I'm going to keep walking in the direction of self-love. And I don't know what that looks like, but I know that if I walk in the direction of self-love, it's never going to lead me wrong. I literally screamed that for 45 minutes driving. And it was like the catalyst for like what has been the last 2.5 years of my life. I was like left as this woman on a mission to like never seek validation from another human being again, and just like fully operate from a place of self-love first. So it was the hardest conversation I ever had with myself, because I had to give up something that meant so much to me to get to where I wanted to go. So yeah, it was intense. It's like one of the most emotionally intense things of my life so far. I've been through a lot of shit.
Yeah. I'm like, holy girl.
Totally.
Right, but you're on the other side of it and you're walking through it, which is amazing and really empowering for other women, because I've had interviews on this podcast where people have been like worried because it's called the Mompreneur podcast, but I'm the mompreneur. But the podcast and everything behind it is about women empowering women and about the choices that you have in your life, and that just because I'm a mom doesn't mean that other people want to be a mom, doesn't mean that they agree with everything. But this podcast is a variety of everything and all conversations because they should be freaking talked about. Like, I know so many people that were in relationships that wouldn't talk, that would change into a different person, and they would never understand until they came out of that relationship that changed them. Like, when I met my husband, I knew that was the man that I was going to be with. And it was just like this switch. And I know someone was like, oh, that sounds so cliche. I'm like, well, maybe to you, but like to me, it was real. And now I'm married. And so there's the tough conversations that I've had to have with him, and also moving through with him through because he has an ex-wife.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably one of the toughest things that I've ever done, because she was not a very nice person at that stage. And granted, there was a lot of things that were going on between the two of them, and a lot of anger and resentment that I did not fully understand, but a lot of it was taken out on me. And holy shit, I had never been anxious the way, like when you were talking about just randomly getting these panic attacks, that started happening and people were telling me that I had to be quiet about something because you couldn't find out. And that crushed me internally, where finally I'm like, you know what? Fuck that. I am not being quiet, because this is my life. Like, you guys you can sit there and be scared and live in fear about this person. I said, but this person is still just a person. Yeah. And I've treated her like a human, because that's what she is. And I've always called her out on her shit. And she's done the same thing with mine, that now I actually have a pretty decent relationship with her. And everybody just looks at me like, how do you have this relationship? And I'm like, because I choose to be the bigger person in this scenario and not just look at it from my eyes. I choose to look at it in a different perspective. And oh yeah, some days I'm sure we both piss each other off beyond belief, but there's boundaries there. Like, it's so important that even if there is a toxic relationship, you can make up these solid boundaries and really stand in who you are and your values. And that's okay. Like, it's okay.
Totally.
Oy. So in regards to like a relationship and in business, because we both are entrepreneurs, do you think that if you're in, like, what is your opinion that if you're in a disruptive relationship, how that's going to correlate into your business? Like, do you believe that that's also going to mix into your business and you're going to start seeing certain things fall to the wayside?
I think that, like I said earlier, people grossly underestimate the impact of an unhealthy relationship, because we are literally the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And even more so, that's just when you speak about your friends. Take it up a next level. You're sleeping with this person, like you are literally exchanging energy and intimacy and crawling into bed with this person at night. If that is fucked up and it is not okay at home, how can you operate well in every other area of your life? You're going to be stressed. You're going to be not focused. You're not going to be able to like zone in on what you need to get done, because you're too busy thinking about, I have to make eye contact with my husband at the dinner table tonight, and I pray to God he doesn't touch me when we go to bed. That's a problem. So I totally think that, like, I don't think that you can have an unhealthy romantic relationship and just like shut that off and just like kill it in every other area of your life. You might be doing good because you go there to meet your needs in your business or in your career, whatever it is you're working towards, but you might be operating at like a 75. Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I didn't hear anything.
Oh man, I totally thought I put my phone on airplane mode. So bad. Okay. Anyways, I totally think that it just totally disrupts every area of your life. And I don't think that you can shut it off. And if you're operating at like a 75% in your work, you could be operating at 100 if you were to remove that part.
Yes. And I think that also correlates to having tough conversations, because even if me and my husband we get into an argument, it really does affect a lot of other things, and the energy behind certain things that I post or how I feel about something, it just doesn't feel right. And so even this morning, there was a moment where I was just tired. I was like, and I knew that I wanted to post something and do this, but I'm like, you know what? This is not coming from like a space of actually wanting to do it. And so I held off until this afternoon because I didn't want to do it. But like, if me and my husband I'm the kind of person that I do not let things linger. Like, I do not let things build up, because there is an ugly little green gremlin that will come out.
Yes.
Not pretty. And then I get resentful of a lot of things. And so I know my husband one time, he's like, sometimes I just need to like think, or I need like a day. I'm like, no, you got about 15 minutes.
And then you and I need to talk about this. Totally. Totally.
And then now we're on the same page of like, we figure it out. If we still need like a couple minutes alone, that's fine. But we figure it out and we talk it out. And even there's days where I know that me and him, we've yelled at each other and that we both have looked at each other after and we're like, you know, I'm terribly sorry that those words were said, because words are not forgotten. And I think people forget that too, is you can have a powerful conversation without being angry with somebody, like without having anger come across to it or swearing or yelling.
Totally.
You can still have such a powerful conversation and everything be not convinced. What's the word I'm looking for? Let's just say
Conveyed.
put together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly the word I was looking for.
Yeah, for sure.
No,
I
like
totally
the conversation
agree.
can all be conveyed. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I think so. Something I do when I'm in conversations with people and I feel like we are just like not getting to a place of resolve, I always stop and think like, what's my outcome? What am I trying to accomplish right now? Because it like grounds me and it brings me back, because like even in that relationship I said earlier with my ex, we would get like super feisty because I would start getting so upset that like you weren't listening to me and this is what I need and you're not like budging on it. And I'd have to like stop and remind myself and be like, what is your outcome? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Well, I want connection. I want love. Okay, well, how are you going to get love when you're calling your husband an asshole?
Yes.
You know, like you kind of got to like check yourself and see like, where is this going? Because I think it's so easy to like get out of control with your emotions if you don't have a way to like rein yourself back in, especially when like your values are being threatened and you just feel super unheard by somebody.
Well, and in regards to like talking about anger, when I grew up, like my father is an amazing person, but he very much kind of hung out in his masculine energy and would get very angry really fast. And I remember like I would never want to piss off my dad because you would not want to hear his wrath. And then eventually, as I started getting older and then I had children and I started realizing that I was also doing the same thing. It was like this learned behavior. And even there's some days where I catch myself, but now I've realized that does not have to be my behavior. And even my dad has come to me now older where he's like, I should not have yelled. That did nothing. It did nothing for you and it did nothing for me. And he's like, now I see that you have almost taken on this quality. And he's like, that is not a quality that I want you to have. And I remember when he sat me down, that was like a big pivoting moment where I realized that wasn't an okay behavior and that I needed to be more aware of that and I need to be conscious of that, because anger is not a bad emotion. It is an emotion that is meant to be felt. It's there for a reason, but in an appropriate manner. And I was not using it in an appropriate manner. And I would go from like 0 to 60 in like 2 seconds. I still remember the one time when I first met my husband and something happened and that happened. And he was like his jaw dropped. And he's like, what the hell just happened? Like it totally and I'm like, I don't even know that. I don't even know.
That was me.
Yeah, that was somebody else. That was someone. And I still remember his face. Like I can still, where I was like, oh, did I surprise you? He's like, yeah, like that. And he's not that man. And that's something that I love about him, is that he's not the person that yells. He's not the person that gets angry really fast. If he gets frustrated, you can tell, but he is not one. If he's angry with you, he'll talk to you. He's not going to come in and start yelling at you. And I've always told him that I love that quality about him, because that is something that I wanted in my life, was this person who could be calm and nurturing and understanding. And so but I still, so that day when he made that facial expression, and then when my dad talked to me about it, I knew that was something that needed to be changed. And it was going to be a process because I had been doing it for so long. And so I think people need to understand that when you're having tough conversations, it's going to feel uncomfortable at the beginning, but move through that uncomfortability. Like there's so many conversations that I've had probably in the last 6 months that at the end of it, I sit there and I'm like, you know what? You deserve a pat on the back. That was pretty good. Or I'm like, that was kind of a gong show, but I still did it. And when you move through it, it gives you more, like, it gets easier. It gets easier as you do it. And so now if someone does something and it ticks me off, I tell them right away. I'm like, that was not appropriate and that was not okay. And even my kids, like, we talk to them because all of a sudden they'll get angry or mad at something, or they'll throw something. I'm like, hey, that's a choice, and you have a choice in how you feel, and you can learn how to react in an appropriate way. And and so now my stepson is very aware of that. So when he's feeling something, he now tells us, where he's like, I'm angry and I don't know why I'm angry. And we've taught them that it's okay to let us know about those emotions that they're feeling, because we want to know and we want to help them move through them, so that that's not something that they sit in.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
because there was a while where he was so angry about things, and we were like, what is up, man? Like, why are you so mad? He's like, I don't even know. I don't know. He's like, I'm just angry, and I'm just angry at the world. I was like, okay, well, we need to talk this through, and we need to get through things. And so that's another tangent about children. But in regards to, like, say you're working with a client and she has this disruptive relationship and she is not willing to have these conversations with herself, is there something that you would tell them that, what is something that you would help guide them through to have those conversations with themselves, to realize that they have this power within them to be this confident woman?
I think lots of it comes from like a decision you made when you were really young. So I think it's like kind of in moments like that where you don't want to do it, like going back and kind of like, at what point in your life did you decide that like you weren't allowed to use your voice? Because something happens, right? Like I worked with one lady and she really struggled to say what was on her mind, and she had been working at it for so long. And when we kind of went back and we did this exercise, and it was like, okay, like what happened, where this decision kind of came from along those lines. And when she was like 5 years old, she was told by her grandpa that like children are to be seen and not heard. And it was super painful, right? So like, boom, key decision made. Wow, the one person who gives me a lot of love in my life, this is who I have to be in order to receive love from them. And then you carry that with you subconsciously. And then that gets reinforced because that's the way you believe. So your actions map to it, right? Yeah. And so it's going back and figuring out like, where along the lines did you decide it wasn't okay to say what was on your mind? And then ultimately, like, taking a declaration, right? Like a vow to yourself that like, if you want to work through this, like it requires massive action. You can't just feel uncomfortable about it, but then not do the task required, because it is through repetition that it gets easier.
Yes. And in regards to, I have another question for you, for like women who are coming out of a disruptive relationship and they're feeling low self-confidence, what is a step that you get them to realize that they can be happy alone, and to be happy alone and to find who they are truly will attract that right person in? Like, what is something that you help them with in regards to that? Because I feel like so many people are lost in their relationships because they don't actually truly know who they are, or they think that this person's not going to like them. That's not your person. Like, your person is supposed to love every freaking part of you. And even my husband, he's like, I love every part of you, even the bad days. He's like, because this is the woman I want to be with. And I remember thinking before that no one's going to want to love me because of my anger. And then when I found someone who was able to talk to me and work through that, but I just want to know what you would like help them with in regards to refund that confidence in themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the biggest things I work with women on when they first come out of that relationship, or maybe even before they've left it, is getting super clear on like what your strengths are, because you are so unaware of what you bring to the table. It's unbelievable, because you have survived so many difficult days. You've done so many things, be it navigating an airport by yourself in a different country, like stuff like that, ranging all the way from like, having a conversation with your parents at 16 and saying, hey mom, I don't like it when you treat me like this. Your strengths are so wide, right? Yeah. And maybe you're really good at making an apple pie. I would consider that a strength, because I can't make it, So it's kind of like taking it and it's like using all of those things, because they are all of your strengths. Strengths are so much more than like, I'm good at building a website, or I'm really good at public speaking. Like, strengths are, I'm really good at like, having difficult conversations with myself, or I'm really good at showing up for the people who I care about, even if I feel depleted and I need to take time for myself. Because even though those things are difficult for you, you still rock them. And I think people need to become like super aware of like, what areas are you thriving in? But they don't view it as wins, right? Because we have success on this platform in our mind that it's basically like, I got to make $1 million in my business or else I'm not successful. But the actual entry point to the 1% is 400,000 a year. So you're skewed in the way that you view success, which is like, I want you to stack up as many wins as possible. And like consciously, how many wins a day are you getting? And a win to me is like, I just about spilt my coffee on my laptop, but I caught it last minute. And I'm like, that's a fucking win in the day.
Yes.
You know? And I think it sounds super ridiculous, but when you're constantly on that lookout for wins in the day that like you did and are strengths for you, it just becomes a default. And then when you make a mistake, you're like, I did the best I could with the information I had at the time. And then you just let it go and it doesn't have to be overwhelming.
I agree 100% Especially like, I love how you call it wins, because I like call it like my celebration. Like I like my celebratory things.
Yeah.
And there was so many things, like when I started working with my coach, she always would ask me, what are we celebrating today?
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be like, nothing. She's like, so you did absolutely nothing with your day? Like zero,
Yeah.
really? And I was like, well, I had a warm cup of coffee and it wasn't interrupted. She's like, that should be celebrated.
That is a win. Absolutely.
And even parts of my life where like I didn't even sit there and anchor in the moments when I graduated high school or when I went to university, but then chose to come home and lived on my own and then met my husband and had a family and did those things. I didn't fucking celebrate any of those until I started working with my coach. And she's like, okay, we need to go through and look at everything that you've gone through, and you need to celebrate those things and you need to anchor those moments in, because those are important moments and you should celebrate those things. So when I release a program, or like if I create a journal, I'm like, fuck yeah, I did. And there's never a point where if nobody can see those things, I'm still celebrating them, because there's so many things that we let slide by during the day that we don't celebrate them. And so I think celebration is huge. But also in regards to like, if you have a goal, I was gonna touch on goals and values and boundaries. Like I think people need to become very, very clear on their boundaries and their values, because if you're very clear on what you value, you're able to place healthy boundaries around those values. And so when somebody says something and it triggers you, usually that's because somebody is knocking on a value. That's usually what's happening. And so if you're able to get clear on those things, and then you can celebrate when you're crushing goals, because like, I know that you talk about this being laser focused. I'm pretty sure I've heard you say this before, with being like laser focused. And I love that. I'm like, I need to be laser fucking focused on this stuff. But it's so true though, because there's so many other people. Like when I decided to step into entrepreneurship, there's so many people who didn't believe in what I was doing. And when I first started, I was like, I felt like I had to justify everything that I was doing or explain why I was investing into XYZ. And then it's probably only been 3 weeks ago to actually say this, but hey, it's happened. And that was a freaking win when I decided that I didn't have to justify anything to anybody, because this is my fucking life. Like, and I hope people can have this power of like, you do not owe anybody a freaking explanation for anything that you do. Like anything. If they don't like it, too bad. If they love it, cool. Then they can celebrate with you. But like, anyways. But yeah, do you think it's important to be clear on like your boundaries and values in regards to like, you know, your goals and conversations and stuff?
Yeah. So every 3 months I rewrite my values. I am super obsessed with like timelines and progress. Like I track everything and I am super extreme about it. So like I do it in my own life. So I also do it to my clients. So basically every 3 months I rewrite my values. And so I write out free flow, what they are. So basically what have I subconsciously been operating at for the last 3 months? And then I take it, and if it's not in alignment in the best possible way for me to reach my goals, then I restructure them consciously. And I rank them in order of importance to me that's going to bring me closer to my goals. And I make my clients do it, but I also have a list of non-negotiables, which is huge. And these are things that like I will not tolerate in a relationship, and I will not tolerate in myself. And for me personally, I have them in every area of my life. With my clients, we really focus on like romantic relationships. So it's like what is a non-negotiable for you? For me is I won't be with somebody who doesn't naturally default to just showing up for the people they care about. That is a big deal to me. Another one is if you are passive aggressive in any way and I ask you if you're upset about something and you say nothing, I'm fine, and ignore me, like we're done, date over, don't call me. Yeah. And those are firm boundaries. Like those are firm non-negotiables, or like boundaries. Your word is boundaries. Mine is non-negotiables. Yeah. And it's basically like you could be like a 10 and I could be so attracted to you and you could have everything in alignment. And if I asked you what your problem was and you were acting pissy towards me and you decided to like ignore me and walk away from me, like game over.
Yep.
Deal breaker. And I think it's so healthy for us to have those, because that stops the bullshit of being in situations that don't serve you, aren't healthy for you, and staying in relationships that take way too long for you to end because you are unclear on what you are not willing to tolerate.
100%. And I think, because you were touching on if somebody can't just be straight up with you about what's bothering them, you should be able to talk about what's bothering you if you actually value the relationship. I firmly believe that as well. Like, I know that there's days where I've caught myself where I'm like, I'm fine. Like, just kidding. Actually, I'm not. It's one of those things that I'm like, no. Like, even my husband will do it. And he's got this weird, like, he does this facial expression where I'm like, okay, do I have to sit here? Because I'm not going to sit here and ask you a million times what it is. You can either talk to me about it or don't bring it up ever again. It's pretty simple. And then, but he always does. He always is like, okay, all right, I'm good to talk about it. But I'm like, I always refuse to sit there and force someone to say something. But you should just have this openness to have this conversation. Like, I truly believe that. And I like how you call them non-negotiables in regards to boundaries, because really, like, non-negotiables. I really like that.
I have a funny story about non-negotiables for you. So this passive aggressive thing has been a non-negotiable for a long time for me. I was in a relationship with somebody and we were driving. He was super upset with me about something. I still to this day don't know what the problem was. But anyways, we're driving down the highway and he was like, I need you to pull over and let me out of the vehicle. And we were a decent ways out of the city. Like we were probably like at least an hour or so out. Yeah. And we pulled over on the side of the road. He gets out of the vehicle and I was just like, babe, are you going to talk to me? And he was like, looked at me, shook his head and started walking in the ditch and was ignoring me. And I was like, you have 15 minutes to have a conversation with me or I'm going to leave you on the side of the highway. And he did not have the conversation with me. And at like the 15-minute mark, I was like, Kate, like if you don't come here and talk to me, I'm leaving you. And I'm like continuing on my way. He didn't talk to me. I literally left his ass on the side of the highway. It wasn't one of my most beautiful moments, but like it was definitely a non-negotiable. Yeah. And I had a really hard time with it. I mean, would I do that now? No, that's a little bit extreme, but that was part of the like Natasha wasn't so graceful once upon a time. But like, I think sometimes when you set those non-negotiables, like, and you consciously do it and you do it for a reason, they are so powerful. It's not just like this subconscious default that comes out that you don't understand why you do it. For me, it's super painful when people are passive aggressive towards me because of like my childhood with my parents. So it also makes sense why I left him on the side of the highway for not having a conversation with me. Crazy shit.
Hey, I believe that everybody has moments that aren't so great. Like I talked to you about how me and my best friend were in a fist fight. Like, hey, that's not my finest moment ever. And I've had others where I look back and I'm like, I would love if there was an erase button, but like myself and the other person could forget it. But I've also learned so many things from that scenario. And so I'm sure you've also learned a lot from that situation too.
Totally. Like, don't leave and get in the vehicle together if it's already a fight. No, I'm just kidding. Bad.
Well, okay. So why do I always say that? Oh my goodness. Like, yes.
I love it.
For women that are listening, and if they're going through a tough relationship, what if you could give them one piece of advice that they could just walk away with, what would that
staying in a relationship because you feel guilty about hurting the other like your partner's feelings is only doing both of you a disservice.
Yes.
Because so many women stay because they feel like they don't want to hurt their partner's feelings. And it's almost like, in order to spare your feelings, I'll sacrifice mine. But that fucks the relationship up more than they even realize, because you quit having sex with him. And you quit being intimate with him, and you are destroying him more by wrecking his self-esteem by not showing up and like being passionate with him in the relationship than it would if you sat him down at the kitchen table and was like, I don't love you anymore and you deserve to be with somebody who does.
Yes. And in regards, because you were talking about not having sex with the person, sex doesn't fix the relationship, because I feel like sex and intimacy is something that is like special, that should be shared between like two people.
Totally.
And when people like, I've had conversations with so many women where they're having all these troubles, or they're separated, or they're going through something, and they're still sleeping with the man. And the man's been very clear about how this is nothing but physical, but they think somehow that having sex is going to fix that. And it's not going to fix that. Like, even I know someone currently in my life that's struggling with that. And I remember asking him, like, please, I said, I just want you to be honest with me. I said, there's no judgment. I said, but are you still sleeping with him? And the response was like, yep, but it's not doing anything. And it's making me feel like shit. And he just leaves after. And I'm like, then that's where you need to place a freaking healthy boundary and not do that. Like,
yeah, I think there's two parts to sex in a relationship. I think there's the side of it that you're not actually in a committed relationship, which is I'm going to use sex as a tool to try and, I'm going to rock your world in the sheets, and you're going to realize how much of a goddess of a woman I am. And then you're going to change for me. Right? Which I get it. I have fucking done that. So it makes sense. Right? And then there's the other side where it's like you've been in the committed relationship and you want out. And then I think sex becomes just a barometer in the relationship, because when you don't want to be there and you are not like in love and invested in that relationship anymore, you quit wanting to have sex with your partner, and you quit wanting to be touched by them, and you couldn't fake it if you tried. And then the fights become, why aren't you sleeping with me anymore? Why aren't you attracted to me anymore? And that fucks your partner up more than just saying, hey, dude, I don't want to be with you anymore because our life isn't in alignment and we've tried and we're not getting anywhere. So I think that you have like two sides. You have the like casual, I'm going to try and like sleep with you to like a siren to like entice you into this relationship. And then you have the side that it's like, God damn, I'm so tired of you. Don't touch me. So depending on what type of structure of the relationship you're in really depends on where sex falls.
Yep. And even when I got into a relationship with my husband, I've always been very open to having the discussion about like previous relationships. It was never something, I believe if you're having sex, you should be able to talk about it. It should be something that you can have a conversation about. And like, honestly, I have to give some major kudos to my parents, because they were never awkward about talking about sex. And they always were very informative about things and just wanted to make sure that I was safe and I was making the right decision. And so I honored them for that. But like when I met my husband, he had only been with his ex-wife and he had waited until marriage. And I completely honored the shit out of him for that, because when I got into a relationship with him, I wish that I did that. I wish that I had waited. And I remember someone's like, really? Yeah, I do. I said, because it's completely different compared to the people that I just slept with, compared to being with my husband and actually loving this man with every part of my being. Like it's completely different. And I remember we were going to have this conversation and he was getting a little anxious and agitated. And I'm like, if you don't actually want to know the answer, don't ask me. But if you do, I will gladly talk to you about it. And I said, and he decided that he was closing that door because it made him feel uncomfortable. And I said, if there's ever a point where you still want to talk about it, it's on the table. And he just valued the fact that it was never a secret, because it's not. And I will never keep those things a secret, because I think secrets in a relationship just fuck it up. And that's a whole other conversation.
I think secrets just in yourself
Yep.
fuck you up. Like,
Yeah.
not in a relationship, but like I'm super open in my posts and my social media because I feel that like what you refuse to confront controls you. And if I hide that from you, then that means I feel guilt and shame about it. So
Someone actually says like what resists persists.
yes, absolutely.
There's a friend of mine who says that. I'm like, there's two of them that say it, but they say what resists persists.
Totally.
Yeah. And if you don't, I found that in my life that if I just kept, not dealing with the situation, not dealing with it, it would slap me harder in the face every single time until it would literally something would blow up. And if I would have just handled the situation at the beginning, probably would have saved a lot of anger and a lot of other feelings. And so it's like, if you're not going to deal with your shit, it's going to keep coming. It's like, I even just had this conversation about like wealth and abundance and that thing with my coach yesterday, and about how people's limiting beliefs, like people take on other people's limiting beliefs as their own about, relationship, sex, finances, anything. And you can rewrite your own damn freaking story. Nobody's in charge of who you are, and you can change that every freaking day. Every morning that you wake up, like it's, people take that for granted. Like another birthday. Some people don't get another fucking birthday. You do. Like, who cares if you're fucking 30? Like, get over it.
Yeah, totally.
You have an amazing, you got to 30. It's great. And so, I don't know. I just, in regards to just be honest, and I like that you touched on just all the topics that we talked about in regards to relationships and what is powerful, what isn't. And I just really appreciate you coming on here and talking about this, because I feel like there is a lot of moms who aren't in relationships that feel alone. And I know that there's a lot of people who talk about feeling that they don't leave a relationship because they're scared of being alone. But it's not the scary thing of being alone. It's being alone with your thoughts and how you feel about yourself and what actually comes out through that. I think that I firmly believe people are more scared about that than they are of actually being alone. Because I had the conversation with my friend where I was like, I did a lot of shit when I was single. I said a lot of stuff that I don't really do anymore now. And I had a lot of fun. Not saying I don't have fun now, because I do, but it was very different. And I said, so yeah, there's days where I'm like, wow, I used to do a lot of crazy stuff. Yeah. It's different now, and that's okay. But anyways, I just want to thank you for coming on here and chatting with everybody about everything. But before we go, I would love for you to let everybody know where they can find you on social media, website, whatever it is, so that they can get in touch with you if they feel like they want to.
All right. Absolutely. Well, first off, thank you for interviewing me. It was awesome. About everything. So you can find me on Instagram at Natasha Storm _. That's my main account. I also have a website, which is www.starcheskycoaching.com. And you can find me there. And I'm about to launch my freebie course in about a week from now, which is how to leave your relationship and not feel guilty for it. So totally sign up for that. But yeah, that's where you guys can find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And guys, I will see you all in the next episode.